I have the honor to open this panel, I myself am really looking forward to the papers that will be given. It's a very interesting program. It is one of course, the first paper by Nicolas Standaert is about a crucial question. Are the spirits actually present in the rituals supposedly commemorating and dedicated to them? And we go on, and we have Kamyue, and we have the presence in Korea and Japan for this panel. So I'm going to keep very strictly to time. And I have moved over. Would you feel more comfortable here? Okay. So we keep very strictly to time. So Nicolas Standaert will be the first paper. He needs no introduction. He's from Leuven. Please, Nicolas.
Oui.
Thank you.
En premier lieu, je voudrais remercier le professeur Cheng et professeur Feyas pour l'aimable invitation pour participer à cette réunion. When Cheng asked me whether I wanted to present a paper on the Liji, I said, well, I'm really not a specialist on the Liji. I only know a little bit about the 17th and 18th century, so if you want, I can say something on how people in the 17th and 18th century reacted towards the Liji, and that's what I will do. So the title is Coping with Ambiguity, and as you already noticed, this is a term that came across yesterday. The starting question is, when Chinese offer sacrifices to their ancestors, are the spirits of these ancestors really present at the sacrifices, and do they consume the food offerings? Now, for the missionaries in the 17th century, this was an enormous cause of anxiety, because if indeed these ancestors were present, this was idolatry and superstition, and it should be rejected. If, however, they were not present, then these rituals could be tolerated. Now, to reformulate this question in a debate, or let's say development on rituals that is actually taking place, we could also ask the question, does the Liji describe the ancestors as if they were present, or do we consider them really present, or is the description maybe ambiguous? And if it is ambiguous, how to cope with this ambiguity? And I mentioned several names that were already pointed out yesterday, and of which Michael Pewitt and Michael Ng are also here today. So my source will be a reaction by a Chinese scholar in the 17th century, who is really unknown. His texts were not published. He was a scholar from Fujian province. He became a Christian, and we have about 17 manuscripts by him. And these are texts that are really intercultural, namely, until the 1670s, 80s, most of the missionaries were not interested in the Liji, and we hardly have any translation or so, except, of course, the Tashui and the Zhongyong. But they started the rights controversy debate, and they asked Chinese scholars to give them information. And it's in this context that you have a number of scholars compiling texts, among which Yan Mo, and he is extensively using the Liji. So we have intercultural interpretations, and these are lower level literati. These are not the Kinshe degree holders, but most of Christianity was spread among these lower level literati. So here you have one of the manuscripts that are preserved in Rome, and this is Ji Zu Kao, and so you have quotations from the Liji and then commentaries on which I come back in a minute. Just to point out that some of these texts were also translated into Latin and printed, this Summario, and given to the Pope, And here you can see some of the quotations that came directly from Yen Mo, the scholar I'm quoting. But that's on the side. So in the text by Yen Mo, you have a number of questions. These are questions about meaning and not about doing. So not how do you perform these rituals, but what is the meaning of these rituals? So we will focus on more or less these two questions. What is the meaning of these sacrificial rites? And in the sacrifices for the ancestors, does one seek blessings or not? As I mentioned, these are essential points to know whether they are acceptable or not. Basically, the structure of the text by Yen Mo is very simple. First, you have a quotation. These quotations are mainly from what Michael Pewitt yesterday called it sacrificial chapters. Then you have annotations. These are the Han and Tang annotations, and also mainly the Song annotations, most importantly by Cheng Hao. This is the most important source. And then you have the commentary by Yen Mo himself. So let us look at one example. Here you have a text of Tang Kong. The Tang Kong chapter says, in the sacrifices, the principal mourner simply does his utmost. How does he know what the spirit enjoys? He is guided only by his pure and reverent heart. So that's the main text. You have the commentary, which is rather similar, by Cheng Hao. The principal mourner doing his utmost, how could he know that what the spirit enjoys is necessarily located in this ritual? Herewith he only expresses his heart and nothing more. And then you have the commentary by Yen Mo. And he traces first a bit the origin of these rituals. Therefore, the ancient kings, taking into consideration the human heart, instituted sacrificial rites, built temples, put up tablets, they had ceremonial clothing, they had the seasonal dishes, and so on and so on. And then the last sentence, in all these cases, they rely on material things in order to provide home for the immaterial, making them such as if they have something to rely on and be enduring as if they are right before us. And this is, of course, the question in which we are interested. More importantly, or even more striking, is that this is immediately followed by this sentence. This is what the Lunyu says calls to offer as if they were present, and what the Liji chapter calls as if he were seeing the departed, and what the Zhongyong calls to serve the dead as if they were living, to serve the deceased as if they were present. This is the height of filial piety. Now, for those who are acquainted with these discussions about the as if, these are exactly the sentences which we always discuss, and so we find them back in Yen Mo's text. So let us now just focus on one of them, the text by the Zhongyong. I take this quotation, or mainly this quotation, because even Liji already starts with this sentence to explain why it is acceptable or not. So first we have to notice that the use of ru is not only one meaning. There are different meanings possible. And it can be a comparison, so not necessarily an as-if sentence. You can simply say, to serve the dead as one serves the living. A comparison. And so what I did, I traced all the ru sentences in the Liji, and you have a number of sentences that are like that. I gave here 2 examples. Of course, it's always a little bit, you can dispute it, because some of these sentences you still can also translate as an as-if sentence. But let's say it's relatively unlikely that one would say to serve heaven as if one serves, as if this heaven was the parent, which is a bit contradictory. Okay, so that's one possibility. And Plax, for instance, is using this translation. The other possibility is to translate it as an as-if, to serve the dead as if they were living. Or the other way of translating it, like in this case Legge does, as they would have served. So I give a few more examples. You can find the other examples in my paper. These are all as-if sentences. For instance, the one by the Liji. You act as if he were hearing the orders and as if they were perhaps directing him. You feel this kind of... When you look at all these quotations, you can notice these as if pertain to emotions, to gestures used by the mourners, but also in general to the relationship to the presence of the disease, as if one is hearing them, as if they are there, and so forth. So there are different uses of this as if. Now, if we follow this interpretation, there are still two possible interpretations about the presence of this deceased. The first is an ambiguity, namely, one presumes that they are still living, but one is not sure. There is a kind of space of ambiguity, and one does not know, and one does not explain it. And I would say that this is also dominant in the Liji and dominant in the whole tradition. To make a comparison, and I have been searching, and I would welcome other people to give examples, but you do not have extensive treatises on this question. Whereas in the West, you have enormous amount of treatises on the real presence of Christ in the Eucharist, you see? And that's the same type of question. The other possibility is a counterfactual. Indeed, they are no longer there. And the reality of not being there, I mean, this is one reality, is affirmed. This is rather exceptional. For instance, here, this text from the Tangkung, the dead have never been seen to partake in these things. So this goes more into that direction, but even there it's not conclusive, because you raise a doubt, but you don't know what it really is. Okay. Sometimes it is explicit in commentaries. I give one example that is also used by the missionaries, and this is in the Retiang Seshu. So the Retiang, these are the commentaries by the Kangxi Emperor and the classes of the Kangxi and on the classics, on the Seshu. And François Noël is using them. He translated also the Seshu. And what is so nice that in Rome you can find these copies and you still have the paper clips and the paper notices that he used, so you can very easily identify his text. And here you have a commentary by the Kangxi Emperor or the teachers on the Qi Ru Cai, and it's very clearly mentioned there, Fu Gui Shen Wu Xing Wu Sheng Fei Zhen You Zai. It is not so that they are really there. So this is clearly affirmed. What do we see with Yen Mo? He has this final interpretation. So it clearly affirms that they are not there. Here it cannot be clearer. When the Lunyu says, offer as if they were present, as a general principle, if one considers it as if they were present, then one can know that they were not present. That's the point. So they were certainly not there. So they can be used in the as an expression. So he develops this idea on the basis of the Liji. I am very short with that. The spirits do not really eat and drink the sacrifices. Their spirit is not present in the tablet. When sacrificing, one does not see or hear them. It's only a product of the human mind. One does not seek blessings from them. He firmly affirms that. And you can notice that his anxiety is not related to the correct performance of the rituals, as Michael Ing exposes in his book. Usually, is it correct? No, here the question is there a correct belief in the ritual? Are they there? Are they there, or are they not there? And if you do not have the correct belief, then the consequences are strong. Basically, what he does, he takes away the ambiguity by strong statements, by strong negations. It is not that they are seeking any blessing. by stating they have never heard or never said that, which is also a kind of negation, you see. So that's what he is doing. And he's doing this also by using commentaries like Cheng Hao, small sentences. Other classics, he is also, it's not only the Liji, but also refers to the Shijing. And so, for instance, he uses Zhu Xi and Su Zhi for one of the sentences of the Shijing, where Su Zhi clearly says what he sees and hears is fundamentally not there. It comes forth from the thoughts. And Zhu Shan, another commentator, who says, when one is in heaven and the tablet is there, this has to be distinguished, you see, even everyday rituals. So Yen Mo takes away the ambiguity by insisting that these rituals are merely as if, and thus inserts a new sincerity into the ritual, namely by proposing what, according to him, really happens at the ritual. So, interesting enough, Yen Mo's vision underscores that it is not necessary to believe in the ritual in order to perform it, but that the inner state of belief, another meaning of belief, will determine whether one is allowed to perform it or not. And here I want to insist that this is not equivocal, because Yen Mo is a Christian, and when you look at the Christian text, the Eucharist, one would expect that one believes in the real presence of Christ, and that's why one can perform it. Whereas at the same time, for the ancestral sacrifices, the belief is in a mere as if the spirits are there. And that's why he can perform them. And that's what will raise the emotions to have a honor the parents, at least what is the reasoning behind it. So one can see that Yen Mo puts himself within this as-if tradition, and he gives a novel interpretation. The concern is with belief, because by affirming that the ancestors are not there, this creates a ritual space. Michael, you insist on this creation of a ritual space, and here it's the other way that creates the ritual space. It's only because one believes that the ancestors were not there, and that one only acts as if they were there, that they be practiced and can bring about the change within themselves. So Liji, as Michael yesterday said, one should not believe. Here it is, one should believe that it is not a reality, which is again a new type of creation of a reality. Because you say, they are not there, and so that's then the new reality, that they are not there. Ritual is not necessarily opposed to the real world, but as we can see, one of the many realities, the comparison I made with the Eucharist. So finally, the central question raised through this intercultural encounter is maybe how to cope with ambiguity. And this is, for me at least, one of the core questions in the whole rites controversy. Usually we oppose the Jesuits and the Dominicans and so, but in my eyes, they both have the same difficulty in coping with ambiguity. Because one way of saying is we don't know and we continue to have it. They try to take away the ambiguity, and the Jesuits by saying they are not there, and the Dominicans by saying that they are there. There is no ambiguity anymore. And it's difficult to live with this kind of ambiguity. And maybe we as scholars, we also have sometimes difficulty in dealing with the ambiguity of the Chinese text. I thank you for attention.